Hello, my name is Mr. Polk and welcome to my kitchen. Today I'd like to teach you how to make lemon meringue pie. And for lemon meringue pie, you're going to start with a blind baked pie shell. And you can refer back to one of my other videos where I show you how to make the dough, roll it out, and blind bake the dough. And that's because the lemon curd, the base of the lemon meringue pie, is made through the custard method. Now it's a lemon curd, so we're going to use the lemon juice and the water. We're going to bring it to a boil and then temper it in with the egg yolk. But then once that's made, it's going to get poured into each one of the shells. Okay? Once it's poured into the shells, it's not going to go in the oven. It's just going to go in the refrigerator to set. So that's why you have to start with a pre-baked pie shell. You can't start with a raw pie shell. So let's take a look at starting the pie. What you're going to do is take a 2-quart saucepan, and you're going to start with some water, about 12 ounces. And then 2.5 ounces of freshly squeezed lemon juice. A little bit of salt. Let's get that out there. Put that in. And then it's going to have 4 ounces of sugar. And we'll finish with 0.2 ounces of fresh lemon zest. And then what you're going to do is you're going to whisk that together, and you're going to go ahead and put it on the stove and bring it to a boil. In the meantime, we're going to take a look at how we prep the cornstarch and the egg yolk so we can temper this into it. So while our lemon juice and sugar mixture is getting to a boil, we want to prepare the egg mixture that we're going to temper that into. And what we're going to start with is making the slurry. And as you remember from level 1, when you're using cornstarch, you want to make a slurry with the liquid. But here we're going to take the cornstarch and we're going to put it in with the sugar. So we'll take our cornstarch, add it to our sugar, and we're going to go ahead and just mix it around in there. And this is creating what I like to call a dry slurry, in that the cornstarch is mixing with the sugar, so therefore it's not going to clump. Okay? Then we want to take our eggs, and here we have just our egg yolks, so we're going to put those in, just like that. And then after we put the egg yolks in, we're going to add some water, 4 ounces, and then we're going to whisk that together. And then once you whisk the eggs and the water together, then you're going to go ahead and put in your cornstarch mixture. So we just put the cornstarch mixture in and then mix it up. And again, if it's working really nice because I made that slurry with the sugar and the cornstarch. If I wouldn't have done that, it definitely would be starting to clump. I'd have all of those white clumps and everything, and it wouldn't be what we want. So here we have a really nice smooth mixture. And now what we need to do is get our hot mixture and ladle it in. So we now have to gradually add the hot liquid mixture into the eggs while whisking it. And this is called tempering, and we do this because if we poured it in directly, the mixture would curdle and we would cook our eggs. So we start with a ladle, and we just go ahead and pour it in one ladle at a time. And the ladle kind of naturally slows you down, so you can't overmix it. And what we're doing is we're gradually raising the temperature of our egg mixture. Okay? So again, if we poured it in all at one shot, we definitely would be curdling our eggs. So you can see what I'm doing as I go a little bit at a time. And they always tell you to temper in about 2/3 of the hot mixture. I pretty much just do it till I can't really get the ladle in anymore, or till my arm gets tired. Either way. And what's going to happen is we're getting down almost to the end. So what I'm going to do is just take my saucepan and just slowly pour it in. Again, we're still trying to temper. We don't want to cook the eggs. We've been working hard at this point. And once you get it all in, then what you're going to do is you're going to return it to the saucepan. And I always tell people, make sure the saucepan doesn't have any burn marks in it. If it does, get a new one. And then simply take this mixture back into the pan. And then what we're going to do is put this on low heat on the stove, and we're going to start to cook it until it thickens. So after you temper the liquids together, you want to return them to the stove over medium heat. And what we're trying to do is get this mixture to boil, because remember, this has cornstarch in it, and cornstarch is only going to thicken when the liquid comes to a boil. And what you're going to do is you're going to stir, and I like to use my rubber spatula so I can get all the way to the edges. You're going to notice that when I tempered it, I had a whole lot of bubbles. Now I'm starting to get a lot less. That's a sign that the mixture is starting to heat up. Then what happens as you stir, you'll start to get what I like to call a little residue on the bottom of your spatula. And that residue indicates that the mixture is starting to thicken, which means it's getting very close to boiling. And then once it boils, and I call boiling just one little blub or two, a little blub blub, we're going to count it for a minute, and then we're going to go ahead and add our butter. So we're going to keep stirring this until it starts to come to a boil. Okay, so you can see now that our mixture has come to a boil. So what we're going to do is, once you get that initial blub, what you want to do is you want to continue to stir for 1 minute. Okay? So as you can see, if I were to stop, you'll start to get it to blub up again and boil, but I want to keep mixing because it's extremely important that this doesn't burn. All right, this is a very thick liquid right now. As you can see, right now it leaves what we like to call a trail. And if all I did was let it sit on the stove, we're pretty much going to run into problems because it's just going to burn on the bottom. So again, when you see that first sign of the blub, that's when you need to go ahead and start stirring. And then once you've stirred it for a minute, what we're going to do is finish it like we finish most French products, and that is we're going to turn off the heat, we're going to put in some unsalted butter, and we're just going to slowly mix that in so that everything comes together and makes this lemon curd extra silky. So now that it's been a minute, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my heat, and I'm going to put in my butter. All right, I have 2 chunks of butter, and I am just going to go ahead and whisk that in until that butter melts. And that's what really gives it that velvety texture. And when you do this, it's important that as soon as you're done, your shells are ready to pour them in, because this is going to start to set up for you right away. Like a lot of your sauces, it's going to start to form a skin, so we want to get it in there right away. So now that we prepared our lemon curd, what we want to do is we want to pour it into our shell. And here I have 4 small pre-baked shells that I made. And again, if you wanted to, this would go into one large pie as well. And all I'm going to do is just pour this in right up to the top, and it's going to pretty much level itself off. And what's really nice is right now it's very, very pourable. It's going in there. And then you're going to pop these in the fridge, and this is going to set up. And I know a lot of times you make lemon pie, you can buy the filling, but it's really nice to make it from scratch. And my favorite part of making it from scratch is that look at that beautiful color. That yellow color, that's natural. That's coming from the egg yolks. It's coming from the lemon juice, the lemon zest. Right? It's definitely not artificial, and that's what really makes it. And this is a more difficult pie to make. It has a lot of different steps, but at the end, you're really going to be proud of the product that you made. After you've made the base for your pie, you want to go ahead and start your meringue topping. And for this, we're going to make an Italian meringue. And the Italian meringue is special because we're going to mix up the whites, get them to a stiff peak, and then we're going to pour in sugar that we've cooked up to 240 degrees, and we're going to pour that in, and it's going to drizzle. And when we drizzle that cooked sugar mixture, what it's going to do is it's going to set the whites, so we don't have to worry about cooking them or doing anything to them. We can just hit them with a torch. And at the same time, it's going to add sweetness to the meringue, and it's really going to give the structure to the meringue. So this is an important step. So to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to take our bowl, and I cleaned it out. Whenever you work with egg whites, it's important not to have any fat. So I always take a little towel and put a little white vinegar on and wipe my bowl out. And we're going to separate the eggs. We need 6 ounces of egg white. That's going to go into the bowl. And what amazes me all the time when I make meringues is that we have such a small amount of whites, and it volumizes so much. And then you're going to go ahead and add your vanilla, okay, about 3/4 of a teaspoon, and just a little pinch of salt. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put that into the mixer and we're going to start to mix it. We're going to start slow and work our way up to develop the volume. At the same time, we want to prepare our sugar mixture. So we're going to take 3 ounces of water, put it in a small saucepan, and then we're going to add about 9 ounces of sugar. And what we're going to do is mix that up and then go ahead and get it boiling on the stove. And what's important when you deal with the sugar is that you're going to stir it till it dissolves, get it on the stove, let it heat up a little bit, let it dissolve some more. However, as soon as the sugar starts to boil, you want to get your thermometer in there and you don't want to touch it. Okay? If you touch it, you can mess with the crystalline structure. What you can do is you can use a pastry brush with a little bit of water and you can brush the edges down, and you'll see me do that. But it's important that you know that once it's boiling, you don't touch it. And you're going to need a candy thermometer for this. We're going to take it to 240 degrees softball. And it's important to understand that be very, very careful when working with this because you're dealing with molten sugar and it's 240 degrees. So if you get this on your skin, it's going to burn. All right, so it's important that when we're working with sugar, be very careful because everything is going to be very hot. So now you can see that our sugar and water mixture has come to a boil. We're going to boil it to about 240 degrees. That's called the softball stage, meaning that if you took a spoonful of the sugar and put it in the cold water, it would turn into a little ball and be soft that you could squish it. And what you got to remember is you can't stir this at this point. You'll mess with the crystalline structure. But you can take a silicone brush and a little bit of cold water, and you could carefully just brush around the edges. Notice I'm keeping my hand away from anything. I'm not getting any close to the sugar. I'm just using the edge of the brush. But that's something you can do. And we're going to go ahead and boil this until it gets to 240 degrees, or what we call softball. And again, please, please, please be very cautious with this. When you pick this up, use the pot holders. You're going to keep your hands out of the way. You definitely don't want to get burned by the sugar. You need to be very, very careful. When mixing meringue, it's important that a lot of people say, oh, I know what to do, and they just take it right up to 10, but you have to build the volume, and you have to go through the phases. Right now, this is at the foaming phase, and it's working its way up to soft peak. And I have it at 4. I'm going to take it up to 6. And when it gets to soft peak, what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently sprinkle the remaining sugar into it, the remaining 4 ounces of sugar, and that's going to incorporate into the meringue. But when you do it, you have to sprinkle it, and you have to wait till you're at soft peak. At this point, we have approached soft peak, and I want to show you that, so I'm going to turn the mixer off and lower it, and you can see that as I go around, it's going to make a peak in the bowl. All right, I'll do one to the front, but it's not going to hold that really nice point. It's just going to kind of fall over, and that's going to be our soft peak. So what we're going to do is put the mixer back on, take it back up to about 8, and we're going to gently just keep pouring this in. And note that I'm in a metal container, and I'm just sort of shaking it in because you want it to go in slowly. Okay? And then once it goes in, we're going to go ahead and take it up to 9 or 10, and we want to get the stiff peak. So here you can see the meringue has reached stiff peaks. So we're going to turn it off, and what I want to do here is I want to show you that if you take this off and mix it up, and then when you remove this, you're going to see stiff peaks not only in the bowl, but also on the whip. So now we want to carefully add the molten sugar mixture that's at 240 degrees. So we're going to take this to about 2, because we don't want it to be going too much, and spread the sugar. And we're going to take our hot sugar mixture very carefully, and we're just going to drizzle it in. Okay? Make sure it's up out of the way, and we're going to just do a real slow drizzle so it takes it in. We don't want to have our mixer at too high of a speed, because all it's going to do is take that hot sugar mixture, and it's just going to put it all over the place. As soon as we get all of the hot sugar mixture in, now we need to take it back up to stiff peaks again. So what we're going to do is take our mixer, and we're just going to work our way up. And we're going to work our way up to 10, and we're going to let that go until it creates stiff peaks. So here you can see our mixture has reached the stiff peaks again after adding the hot sugar. So I'm going to turn it off and lower it because I want you to see it. And pretty much what you're going to notice here is that if I go around, you're going to see the stiff peaks. And if I go ahead and get all of this wonderful meringue out of here, you're going to see that if I take the bowl and turn it upside down, you're going to see that all the meringue stays in and none of the meringue comes out. And that's how you know you've created the beautiful stiff peaks. Now, this meringue is warm yet because we just mixed it and poured the sugar in. So what we're going to do is put it back in our mixer and let it go around on stir or speed 2 just for a little bit until the bowl starts to feel cool. So now that you've made your meringue and you put it into a pastry bag with a large tip, like an Ateco 825, you take your original shell that you put your lemon curd into, and now you're going to pipe it. And it's real easy. One method is we like to pipe a little rosette right in the middle. And then what you do is you just take your piping bag and you just go around the rosette and just build your way up till you make it to the center, and you've got yourself a beautiful little meringue pie. Another option is you can go ahead and start on the edges and just kind of pipe like this, just sort of squeeze and hold. And what you're going to do is just pipe these little stars right around, and then one star in the center, and then just do it again and just kind of go around little ones like that until you get it done. If you're doing a really large pie, you could do it that way. But there's a lot of different ways that you can have fun with it. And then the last step is where you have to be very careful, and you can use a kitchen torch to torch the meringue. Definitely something if you're doing at home, parent supervision. Or another easy way is you can just use the broiler in your oven and just put it in there for a real short amount of time until it starts to brown, and then take it out. Using the broiler was always the traditional way, but if you use a torch, you want to go ahead and take your torch, I'll put it right there so you can see it, and you want to turn it on to the left, so use these in class, turn it on to the left, and then squeeze the trigger for the flame. All the way to the left is super high, all the way to the right is low. We want somewhere in the middle. Also, they have the air adjustment ring here where if you turn it this way, it makes a weird flame. If you turn it that way, it gives you the cone. Always keep your torch away from you and keep it away from any type of flammables. And then just go ahead, and all it takes, it's like a magic wand. It just takes a little bit of waving of it so it gets some color and it's good. And I'm just going to work myself right around, and that's how you can torch a wonderful lemon meringue. So lemon meringue pies are definitely one of the more difficult pies to make. And it's because of all of the steps. I mean, think about it. You start by making your dough, rolling it out, doing the blind baking, and then set them aside. Then you make your lemon curd, which requires the tempering and cooking it till it thickens, pouring it in the shell and letting it set. Then once it sets, you make your meringue. And the meringue is challenging in itself, especially the Italian meringue, because you had to cook your sugar to 240 degrees at the same time that you were developing your egg whites so they got the stiff peak. Incorporate them, and then go ahead and pipe them on, and then do the finish, whether you would use the torch or you would use the broiler of your oven. Just in closing, I want to remind you that if you make this pie, make sure you're very careful. Make sure you're very careful when you're using the hot sugar. 240 degrees will burn your skin and it will kind of latch on. So that's very cautious. If it happens, get right to water. If you use the torch, make sure you're very careful with that. Make sure all of your flammables are out of the way, light it away. And again, as I showed you, it was just like a magic wand, just back and forth. All right, and if you use the broiler, be careful with that because it happens very quickly. Fairly much put the pie in, turn the broiler on, and just watch it. So in closing, even though this is a more difficult pie, when you're finished, it's very rewarding. So here you can see how you can use all of the skills that you've learned in the pastry art so far to create these pies. So thank you for baking with me today, and I can't wait to bake with you real soon right here in Mr. Polk's kitchen.